get the answer to the trivia question. We asked, the Jamaican Parliament is unicameral. Is this true or false? It's false. The Jamaican Parliament is bicameral. This means that it consists of two houses, the Senate, also called the Upper House, and the House of Representatives, also known as the Lower House. The members of the House of Representatives are elected under universal adult suffrage with a maximum of 5 years between elections. Now, over to the proceedings.
Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Charles, Mr. Terrelonge, Ms. Smith, Mr. Main, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Mr. Green, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Chuck, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Garvey, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Phillip, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Witter, Mr. Wright. Mr. Morgan, Mr. Terrelonge.
Statements by ministers.
Mr. Bad, Minister Bad.
House Leader. House Leader. Statements by ministers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we'll have one statement by the Honorable Daryl, Minister of Science, Energy and Technology.
Minister Vaz.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for affording me this opportunity to provide an update to this Honourable House on the agenda to build a national broadband infrastructure to achieve the goal of universal access to the Internet by 2030. This Honourable House will recall that within the broader national framework is the implementation of a 100-day plan, so-called because it was developed and presented to Parliament within my first 100 days of being appointed ministerial duties for science, energy, and technology. Let me remind Parliament that this 100-day plan is the ICT COVID-19 response, while the national agenda for broadband will build on the 100-day plan and will involve more extensive work to include policies, legislation, regulations, and significant infrastructural investments by both government and the private sector. The House will recall details about both the 100-day plan and the longer-term National Broadband Initiative in my December 15, 2020 presentation and my sectoral presentation on May 18, 2021. Madam Speaker, today I will provide an update on the 3 initiatives that I announced in my December 2020 presentation. 1, digital television network. 2, expansion of the government fiber optic cable and microwave infrastructure. And 3, the expansion of public Wi-Fi hotspots. 2, update Parliament on what I termed as a COVID-19 response in my December presentation, which includes a prioritization of the communication needs of schools. Present a status report on the commitment that I made in my sectoral presentation in mid-May of this year regarding the provision of the technological solutions such as the Tablets in School rollout project, Tablets for Teacher program, and Own Your Own Device program. I will also, Madam Speaker, present an update on the longer-term National Broadband Initiative, provide information on the financing of the various components of the 100-day plan, Phase 1, and present, given the magnitude of what is required to be done and the multi-sector, multi-agency approach that is necessary, information about the management of the effort and the partners that are involved. Status on 3 initiatives announced in December. The digital television network. The intention of this initiative was to provide the Public Broadcasting Corporation with the capacity to broadcast digitally over the air using digital television technology. The primary aim of this was to enable PBCJ to transmit over the air multiple channels of educational content on a 24/7 basis to allow students without internet access to be able to access educational content via their television, even if the television is not a smart TV. Given the complexity of the implementation of a free-to-air digital television system before the full implementation of the digital switchover and supporting standards and regulations, the PBCJ free-to-air digital television capacity proposal will now be executed as part of the longer-term National Broadband Initiative. However, Madam Speaker, in the interim, the Universal Service Fund has provided funding support of more than 20 million Jamaican dollars to the PBCJ to increase the number of playout channels that will be available on subscriber cable television networks, and particularly those operating in rural communities. This in turn means that students living in rural communities with cable television subscriptions will have access to more educational content through their cable service. Initiative number 2 is expanding the government fiber optic cable and microwave infrastructure. The second initiative I spoke of involved expanding the government-owned fiber optic and microwave communication infrastructure outside of the Kingston metropolitan area to all parishes. Madam Speaker, I think it is important to emphasize for this honorable House that we are trying to achieve by this initiative is no mean feat. Extending the government's fiber optic backbone to all parishes. A fiber optic cable gap analysis was done to identify areas across the country where there is currently little or no access to private dark fiber strands, which the government could seek to leverage. The analysis indicated that roughly 200,000 meters of new fiber optic cable must be installed between the parishes of St. James and Portland along the North Coast Highway. Another 100,000 meters must be installed along sections of the South Coast to repair and replace damaged cables. And an additional 300,000 meters.
Minister, just a moment. There's a heavy, heavy murmur. can hardly hear.
Thank you,
Please.
Madam Speaker. And in addition, 300,000 meters of new fiber optic cables must be installed from each municipal corporation into the interior of each parish to facilitate connections to the select government entities such as public educational institutions. At present, the government, with the assistance from the private sector, has expanded its fiber optic footprint to provide connectivity to the parishes of St. Catherine, Clarendon, Manchester, Westmoreland, St. James, St. Thomas, and St. Anne. We have a commitment from a private internet service provider that will provide fiber connectivity to the parishes of Terrelonge and Hanover by the end of October this year. The parishes of St. Mary and Portland will be connected when the fiber optic cables are installed along the North Coast Highway. I have met with the team at the National Works Agency and have received assurances that the installation of fiber optic cables along the North Coast Highway will be fast-tracked. I'm advised that the tenders for these works are already being developed with a view that these cables will be in place by December 2021. Simultaneous installations of microwave and fiber optic communication systems. While we are working to extend the fiber optic infrastructure, simultaneous efforts to install the microwave backbone is taking place. Contracts for the main microwave backbone radios are to be awarded by the end of this month. The microwave network will provide backup connectivity in the event that fiber optic cables are damaged. The microwave network will also enable fixed wireless connectivity to remote sites such as schools and has a capacity of 1.5 gigabit with the ability to scale as needed. Madam Speaker, I just want to indicate to this Honourable House that one of the biggest risks that we now face to the expansion of the fiber optic and microwave backbone is a disruption to the international supply chain because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has resulted in significant delays in delivery of accessories and equipment, including routers, which are critical to the execution of this work. So that when we are talking about timelines, Madam Speaker, for completion, we are now required to factor in significant delays which affect not only the government's activities, but also those private sector contractors and partners who are working alongside us. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding, we have made commendable strides. We have expanded the connectivity between rural cable operators and PBCJ to facilitate the transition of 24/7 educational content to students living in rural communities served by the rural cable operators. We had 18 of 44 rural cable operators on board at the time of the presentation in December. Since then, we have added 6 more, serving an estimated 3,000 households. Expanded fiber optic cable and microwave connectivity to the municipal corporations and the parish courts. So far, we have connected the municipal corporation and the parish courts of St. Catherine, Clarendon, Manchester, St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, and the municipal corporations and parish courts by fiber.
Good going, keep going.
We have provided microwave connectivity to all parish courts to provide redundant connections in the event of cable damage. The municipal corporations will be similarly connected to the microwave backbone when the microwave radios are installed. Madam Speaker, when I announced, we're going to speak now, Madam Speaker, expanding public Wi-Fi hotspots. So I know I'll get the attention of every member sitting in the House today. When I announced this initiative back in December, I said the government was unable to provide access to the internet to all homes and that this community Wi-Fi hotspot initiative would allow for easy access for residents in these communities. This community component of the public Wi-Fi intervention complements the original effort of the USF to provide free Wi-Fi at major sites. Recall, Madam Speaker, that I asked my colleague members of Parliament to provide a list of 3 locations within their constituencies that they feel should have public Wi-Fi hotspots. This initiative is being spearheaded by the USF in conjunction with eGov Jamaica Limited, and the National Works Agency. I need the leader of the opposition to listen to this. All 189 communities have been selected based on recommendations of MPs. We are proceeding with the implementation in 4 phases. And let me just stop there. Based on a discussion I had and a meeting I'm to have on Thursday, I'm seeking to change from 4 phases to 3 phases and to have everything completed for the 189 Wi-Fi hotspots by the end of this financial year, which means March 2022. And if you take a look, Madam Speaker and colleagues, at the screen, you will see what Jamaica will look like after those 189 hotspots have been put in. And that, Madam Speaker, picture only represents 129 because 60 have yet to be selected that are in the process now. So just imagine 60 more of those dots and what that will do for Jamaica. So as I said, Madam Speaker, we have 69 remaining communities at the inspection stage, with the full deployment expected by the end of this financial year. Madam Speaker, allow me to name the communities in phase 1. Jakes Road, Parade Gardens Community Center, Mile Gully Town, Chenyong Community, Islington, Claremont, Bamboo, Monique, McIntyre, Brook Avenue, Kellett, Lower Vale, Fellowship, Hope Bay in Portland, Windsor in St. Anne, Bombay in central Manchester, Lionel Town in southeast Clarendon, Balaclava in northeast St. Elizabeth, Alligator Pond in South Manchester, Kellett Square, North Clarendon, Range Hill, Western Westmoreland, Cook Street, Western Central Westmoreland, Seaforth, St. Thomas, Duckinfield, St. Thomas, Portmore Gardens, Phase 2, De La Vega Hilltop, Facey District, and last but not least, Newlands in East Central St. Catherine. Madam Speaker, I heard the opposition leader on the television the other night complaining about the slow pace of this commitment that I made in May of this year. Let me just say that when I checked his status, his sites are to be selected and they are in process. But what I can tell you is, leader of the opposition, is that we are going to have 189 between May of this year and March of next year without breaching one procurement guideline. And everybody will get. Madam Speaker, I indicated as well in my December presentation the intention to increase the number of public Wi-Fi hotspots under the original program. 7 additional sites will be established: Falmouth, Savlamar, Morant Bay, Lucy, Spanish Town, Port Maria, Black River by the end of this financial year. Contracts have already been awarded for 3 sites and procurement initiated for the remaining 4 sites. Jamaica will have a total of 20 public Wi-Fi hotspots across Jamaica by March 31st, 2022. Madam Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I did not acknowledge the previous portfolio holders spanning both administrations, because a lot of what I'm doing here is delivering on policies and concepts that came up before my time. I want to make mention especially of my immediate previous minister, who is now my joint minister Minister Favour Williams. We meet and talk, I think maybe almost as much as how we speak with our wives and husbands because of the importance of this initiative. And that is the COVID-19 response connection to schools. Madam Speaker, at the heart of the COVID-19 response is the connectivity to our schools. This is a proverbial elephant in the room. Let me say at the outset that the last step in this effort, which is the actual connection of schools, is not where I would have liked it to be, but significant amount of work has been done to put in the infrastructure to allow for connectivity. From what I outlined earlier, the harsh reality is that time has caught up with us because of our collective failure to make sustained and strategic investments in the country's fiber optic cable infrastructure. That would have allowed us to meet the demand of a digitally enabled school system with or without COVID-19. Let me share with this Honourable House our recent assessment of public school internet service to highlight the internet service gaps that exist. Of the 980 public schools, more than 399 have poor internet service and 220 are without access to internet services for varying reasons. Chief among them is the lack of communication infrastructure in the communities where these schools are located. This means that over 600 public schools, or 3/4 of the student population, estimated to be 600,000 students, are impacted by poor quality or no internet service. We have therefore developed a 3-tier connectivity plan for the public schools, with 48 places of safety also included in the plan. We are no longer going to allow each connected school to negotiate individually with service providers. Instead, schools are being grouped based on their enrollment and bandwidth requirement, and service providers are required to create a private data network for each group. Madam Speaker, that is huge, because that will give us control, not only control of price, but control of service. Each group of schools will be connected to the government's backbone, over which they will get access to the internet and data services. This type of network service gives the government the ability to share a single source of internet to the various groups of schools and eliminate the need to manage over 900 individual internet service contracts, providing instead for a single internet service contract for all schools. And again, I want to commend Minister of Education, Favour Williams, for the hard work that we are putting in. Additionally, Madam Speaker, it will allow the government the ability to monitor the performance of each school internet service in real time. Most importantly, the government will have the ability to centrally filter content to make sure that students are not exposed to illicit and inappropriate material. Let me repeat that. We will be able to make sure that students are not exposed to illicit and inappropriate material. Madam Speaker, let me briefly describe the 3 tiers of the school connectivity plan. Tier 1 involves public schools with enrollment between 100 to 400 students and requiring 10 to 40 megabits per second of bandwidth. A tender is currently out for the local internet service provider to provide wide area network service, fiber microwave, for these schools, and we are almost at the closing of those bids. Approximately 661 schools are a part of this tender. The projection for the implementation to be completed by the end of the school term, approximately 66,735 students stand to benefit if all schools are awarded. Tier 2 covers approximately schools located in rural and deep rural communities with the enrollment of up to 400 students requiring 10 to 40 megabits. These schools are located in communities that lack the fiber or microwave communication infrastructure. The satellite internet service provider is required to provide a private network on which the various group of schools will access their internet service. A web portal will also be provided to allow the government to monitor the performance of their internet service in real time. Madam Speaker, the bids for the satellite service tender will close in a few days. Implementation is expected by the end of the school term, meaning December. Approximately 480 public educational institutions are a part of this tender, serving over 54,395 students who will benefit. Tier 3, Madam Speaker, are schools that are with enrollment between 500 and 2,000 students and require bandwidth of 50 to 400 megabits. These schools experience some of the greatest difficulties in accessing quality internet service and represents the largest segment of the student population. Some of these schools are paying thousands of US dollars per month with the help of the alumni to ensure reliable access to the internet, as bandwidth usage increases for these schools on average between 50 to 100% per year. Madam Speaker, these schools will now be connected directly, once again, to the government's backbone. These connections will enable upload and download speeds of 1 gigabit, providing the schools with additional capacity for many years to come. Once again, Madam Speaker, this plan is not about today. This plan is about the future, and we will have to come back to this at another stage. So, Madam Speaker, we have identified 244 of these schools across the 14 parishes. These schools have a combined student population of 277,391 students. They cover, Madam Speaker, all parishes. There's a breakdown in my speech here, but in the interest of time, if there's anybody that would like to see the breakdown of the student population and the bandwidth and the name of the school, it's in my presentation. Once connected, Madam Speaker, these schools will no longer need or be required to pay a monthly recurring cost for their internet service. Just to give you an example, Madam Speaker, for those of us who know Kingston and St. Andrew, Arden High School was paying 5,000 US dollars a month in order to supply their students with a private provider to supply their students with internet and the required amount. Now, as of 2 weeks ago, Minister Williams, as of 2 weeks ago, they pay zero. Zero. So just think, Madam Speaker and colleagues, what Arden can do with an additional 5,000 US dollars a month to help offset other costs to improve their educational content. Madam Speaker, we have completed fiber connectivity to 45 of these high bandwidth schools. Of the 45 schools, 21 are accessing the internet service at the required bandwidth. The remaining 24 schools are awaiting the installation of equipment to activate the fiber cables. We anticipate that these 24 schools will be able to have internet access by the middle of October, with an additional 40 schools to be added by the end of November. Madam Speaker, the NWA is currently procuring qualified fiber optic cable contractors to aid in the installation of fiber optic cables to these high bandwidth schools in each parish. We expect to see an acceleration of fiber connectivity once the procurement is finalized. Madam Speaker, I'm therefore putting the educational sector on alert that we are approaching the end of an important procurement activity that will allow the pace of implementation to move much quicker. Of note, Madam Speaker, as well, is that the connection to these high bandwidth schools will increase the penetration of fiber optic cables into many communities that have no access to the internet. These schools will therefore serve as an anchor institutions to enable local providers to access spare fiber strands to expand their services to unserved and underserved communities. Once again, Madam Speaker, thinking of the future. So once the internet goes to the school can be the anchor, and communities and districts in and around that area can benefit from it. Once again, Madam Speaker, a holistic plan, something that governments have failed for many, many decades. This plan is a holistic plan and will address wide-ranging issues that we have been facing for decades. Madam Speaker, I just want to point out, because I do not want to accuse anyone to accuse me of not knowing my mathematics. The numbers I mentioned above add up to more than 980 schools and 48 places of safety that I mentioned. And those 980 schools are scheduled to be completed in this school term. When I spoke in May, I said September school term. Some people think I said September. But I purposely said September school term because I know what happens, and I know that if I'm finished by December, I would still not have misled the House or the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, this is why we have designed our connectivity plan in tiers. Timing is a very big factor, and so while there are many schools that may be connected via fiber microwave, because of the time it may take to get fiber microwave to these locations, satellite connectivity may prove to be a faster option, and so we have built in some overlap with the procurement process that will address to ensure that we'll have our schools connected in the fastest possible time with the best infrastructure that allows us to address the educational sector's immediate needs. Madam Speaker, I now turn briefly to the address I made and the commitments I made in my sectoral presentation. Provision of technological solutions. Madam Speaker, the government has committed and continued support to the education sector by the provision of devices to the teachers and students. By way of reminder, because some of our memories are very short deliberately, 40,000 tablets were procured at a cost of $982 million and distributed to students in the program for advancement through health and educational path under the Tablets in Schools rollout project. 26,000 tablets were procured at a cost of $809 million for teachers in public schools under the Tablets for Teachers program. 15,000 laptops were procured at a cost of $1.3 billion for students in the PAAC program. $720 million were earmarked for our own your own device to assist 36,000 students to purchase a device. This initiative is continuing into this financial year. Madam Speaker, the expenditure across these initiatives amount to more than $3.3 billion in the last fiscal year. And again, I would like to acknowledge my colleague in the Ministry of Education, but more importantly, the Minister of Finance, without whom this would not be possible based on the allocations. Madam Speaker, we also did 5,000 laptops, which will be procured for teachers at a cost of $400 million. We expect to put 55,000 devices into the hands of students and teachers in this fiscal year at a cost of approximately $2.3 billion. These initiatives require significant procurement, which must be carried out in keeping with the Public Procurement Act. Very briefly, Madam Speaker, the bigger picture, which is a National Broadband Initiative update. The Honourable House will record that I announced my intention in the sectoral presentation to request of Cabinet and Parliament to designate the National Broadband Initiative as a national development project, and that the procurement is to be treated as a priority. That is still my intention, Madam Speaker. However, we are working to develop not only a national broadband network, but a comprehensive national broadband strategy, which looks at all factors that will support the viability of the network, once implemented and the use of the same by all segments of the population. Last year, the National Broadband Task Force and the Ministry, with keen support from our international development partner, the Inter-American Development Bank, identified the key inputs elements required to support not only the implementation of the strategy, but also the actual broadband network. Since May of this year, The International Finance Corporation has come on board to help us to complete our assessment of the best way to expand, finance, operate, and maintain the network itself. So far, stakeholder consultations have been held with regulators, government entities, and private sector telecommunications and utility providers. From these consultations, along with the other data we have provided, we expect that the IFC will be able to provide its recommendations on the best option to ensure that we have a sustainable island-wide open access network. In this regard, later this week, the technical officers from my ministry, the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, regulatory authorities, as well as representatives from the National Broadband Task Force will be having preliminary discussions with the IFC team on these options, and it is expected by the end of the year we will have a complete assessment which will help us to chart the way forward. Additionally, our partners from the European Union have come on board and will be providing us with a consultant to assist in putting together the other necessary elements of the broadband strategy. The goal, Madam Speaker, remains to have a truly digital society by 2030, but to have the broadband initiative completed by 2025. As I said in my sectoral presentation, quoting from a former Prime Minister, it takes cash to care. Recall, Madam Speaker, that I indicated to Parliament that the 100-day plan will be fully funded by the government of Jamaica. It is a coordinated effort by all segments of the government. So far, the Ministry of Finance has put $1.8 billion, Ministry of Science, Energy, and its agencies $844 million, Ministry of Education $450 million towards the tablets for teachers and $750 for Own Your Own Advice, and the Ministry of Finance $330 million through the CDF, and Ministry of Justice $27 million, and other ministries $6 million. That takes us to a grand total of over 4 billion Jamaican dollars. 4 billion Jamaican dollars. So what that says, Madam Speaker, is it's one thing to have a plan. And for too long we have had several good plans, but unfortunately no fiscal space to support it. This plan is fully funded, Madam Speaker, and therefore there is nothing to impair us from getting it done other than making sure we navigate the procurement guidelines efficiently. Madam Speaker, at the outset of the presentation, I mentioned that the work to expand the national fiber optic and microwave infrastructure, connect our schools and select public entities, and to work towards the broader goal of universal access requires significant collaboration and cooperation across sectors and ministries, departments and agencies, with both technical, strategic, and financial advice. Let me stop here, or pause here, Madam Speaker, to commend the members of the National Broadband Task Force, led by the Honourable Michael Leachin, the Infrastructure Subcommittee of the NICTAC, National ICT Advisory Council, led by Mr. Keith Duncan, Ministry of Education and team, Minister and PS and team, Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation through the NWA, eGov, USF e-learning, OUR, Spectrum Management Authority, and of course my entire team led by my PS in the Ministry of Science. For the effort in taking us to where we are, let us not underestimate the magnitude of the work that is to be done and the challenges that have been presented in carrying out this work in a pandemic. The government of Jamaica cannot, working on its own, achieve universal access. Strategic partnerships with the private sector and development partners are indispensable. Let me therefore thank the players operating within the private ISP's network space for agreeing to the integration of the government's network with their own and in the manner in which we have designed our various initiatives. 2 of the 3 largest ISPs have been successfully integrated. I wish to also thank the many rural cable operators for partnering with the PBCJ to provide educational content to the students in rural Jamaica. I also acknowledge the operators of the highways for allocating access to their dark fiber, which has been critical for the expansion of the broadband network. Madam Speaker, we appreciate, as I said before, the support afforded to us by the IDB and more lately the IFC, which I mentioned. In concluding, I want to invite my colleagues to contemplate the strategic implications of what this fundamental shift to universal access to the internet will mean for the country, but also specifically what it means for the educational sector and educational outcomes, especially in a pandemic. Let us understand, Madam Speaker, no amount of increase in teachers' contact sessions will result in the recovery of the lost time attributed to the COVID-19. We must chart a different path. Madam Speaker, with these initiatives, therefore, we are meeting the challenge of equity. We are meeting the challenge of quality. We are meeting the challenge of access. We are meeting the challenge of high cost of internet access to public schools. Madam Speaker, I thank you and will provide another update to the Parliament and the people of Jamaica, either before or at the start of the next school term in January 2022. Thank you. Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
One.
Madam Speaker, I ask for a deferral at this time. We will take your second statement after. If you could just...
It's 1 page, you know. 1 page.
Yes, I know, but...
Okay.
Yes. Right? Madam Speaker, I ask for a deferral at this point to take... yes.
Members, House Leader is requesting that there is a suspension of the agenda and a deferral of the statement be made by the Minister now. So we are asking for deferral for us to move and to the item announcement and thereafter the item notices of motions given orally. We're doing this to facilitate the fact that the first supplementary estimates are being laid on the table this afternoon, and we have the press who are standing by to deal it. So the question before the House is that we have a deferral of the completion of the Minister's presentation to Parliament and a suspension of the agenda as it stands. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. So now I'm going to announcements.
Just for clarity, when will we get back to
today?
Laid on the table of the House today are the Jamaica First Supplementary Estimates 2021-2022 and the Government of Jamaica Fiscal Policy Paper for the financial year ending March 22.
Members?
Interim report.
We now move to the item, notices of motions given orally. I'm going to invite the Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. Be it resolved that the first supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022, and the interim fiscal policy paper, which were laid on the table of the House on the 28th day of September 2021, be referred to the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I'll move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
And Minister Shaw asked you just to hold. We're just dealing with the estimates that are being tabled. Members, we now move to the item on the agenda, public business. Public business. Minister of Finance.
Yeah, Julian, I just have two. Sorry. Can you just... Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
The question before the House is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister of Finance to take the motion, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now Be it resolved that the first supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022, which was laid on the table of the House on the 28th day of September 2021, be referred to the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report.
Yeah, but I don't like it. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I just ask you to permit me to just say a few words just to narrate what has been tabled. It will take no longer than 3 minutes or so.
And it's granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today I tabled the first supplementary estimates for financial year 21-22 along with the interim fiscal policy paper. A major focus of the supplementary estimate is addressing the intensification of COVID-19 by providing additional resources to the health sector, increased resources for the most vulnerable, along with funding for other critical areas of expenditure. Madam Speaker, the first supplementary estimates are being tabled in the context of government revenues exceeding budgetary targets by $17.3 billion for the 4 months, April to July of 2021. This is reflective of the estimated robust economic growth of 12.9% for the first quarter of this year as the economy begins a strong recovery from COVID-19. Total expenditure is being increased by approximately $33 billion, while total revenues are being revised upwards by $33.5 billion for the full fiscal year. The expenditure increase of $33 billion is comprised of increases to recurrent non-debt expenditure of $27.5 billion and interest payment expenditure of $5.5 billion, with capital expenditure unchanged from the approved budget. Of the $27.5 billion increase in the recurrent non-debt expenditure, 56% or $15.6 billion is being allocated to the health sector and towards support of the most vulnerable through the Serve Jamaica program. As such, the full-year allocation to the Serve Jamaica program, which is a government social and economic recovery program that's designed to respond to the challenges posed by COVID-19 and to facilitate a timely recovery from the pandemic and its effects, will increase from $60 billion to $75.6 billion. Approximately $10.3 billion of this increase will be directed towards the health sector, and it includes $1 billion to staff, administer, and run 7 field hospitals across Jamaica, in addition to the quarantine facilities which are operational. $1.4 billion to provide COVID incentive payments for health workers in contact with COVID-19 risks. $731 million to increase manpower at regional health authorities and to settle outstanding gratuity payments. And $4 billion to address outstanding arrears to suppliers of goods and services in the health sector, and $900 million to provide additional subvention support to the University Hospital of the West Indies, inclusive of the field hospital there, among other related expenditures. Approximately $5.3 billion will be directed towards increasing the allocation for targeted COVID-19 social assistance to the most vulnerable and to those who are affected by the pandemic. Additional allocations include increases of $2.7 billion to augment the provision in the approved budget for public sector wage settlements, $1.7 billion for the police department to address critical expenditure, including arrears to suppliers of goods and services, $1.4 billion in a subvention to the University of Technology, whose reserves have been depleted by COVID-19, and $1.5 billion to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, $1 billion of which is for repairs and maintenance of secondary roads. Madam Speaker, capital expenditure remains unchanged at $54.2 billion for the full fiscal year. However, there have been reallocations within the capital budget due to implementation delays with some projects. The Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project has been allocated a further $4.5 billion from this reallocation within the capital budget. Madam Speaker, we've had The Ministry of Health has reported that as at September 1st, 2021, approximately 900,000 doses of vaccines valued at $2 billion have been donated to Jamaica through bilateral arrangements with countries and through private initiatives. The value of these donated vaccines, Madam Speaker, have to be accounted for in the books of the government, and they are accounted for in the first supplementary estimates through an increase in grant resources. So the revenue increase I spoke of earlier, $2 billion of it is grants that have already been received in the form of vaccines, and at a second entry in the equivalent amount of recurrent program expenditure to account for the use of those vaccines. And accordingly, $2 billion of the government's resources originally intended for the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines has been redirected to fund other critical needs. Madam Speaker, I've dialogued with I know the chairman of the PAAC is traveling overseas, and I believe the member from St. Catherine is deputizing in his absence, and we're in discussions as to when the PAAC meeting can be held to facilitate a timely review of the estimates that have been tabled today. We're trying to see if Thursday can work, but that remains to be confirmed. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the latitude just to narrate an outline of what the estimates contain. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, the opposition from the budget debate was on record for calling for greater expenditures in particular areas, particularly around those who were affected the most by COVID. So we are obviously pleased that in the critical areas for the most vulnerable, that there is additional support. We are happy that the Ministry of Health has gotten the additional resources to ensure that it can meet the obligations. I know it's not an opportunity for debate, but I would just say that it's important that where the funds for the most vulnerable are directed, that we ensure that it actually gets to those most in need. While there was an initial initiative last year which provided through the CARE program to some recipients, both anecdotally and based on a study done by Capri, we know a lot of the persons who needed it did not receive it. So I think it is important in the implementation of these initiatives that some attention be given to ensuring the resources reach where they should reach. I noticed an allocation for the outstanding arrears for suppliers. It is an issue which we have raised and which suppliers have raised with us, and I don't know to what extent this will bring it down significantly. It was at $6 billion at the last, when we had the budget debate. But overall, Madam Speaker, we are not against what the government is doing. We believe the expenditures are important, are needed, and will contribute to economic growth and development. We'll have an opportunity after it goes to the PAAC to have a further debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just to say, this is not a debate or anything like that, and I thank the member for his remarks, for his gracious remarks. But just on the thing with the CARE program, as to, yes, there's a report that came out, but I believe the report has deficiencies in the sense that what is seen as a CARE program is the electronic application mechanism, which had a particular purpose because we had a new class of vulnerable, 150,000 people who had lost their jobs, and we needed to reach them. But the CARE program was much broader than the electronic platform, and it included disbursements through ministries, and I will provide something so that everybody can be reminded of that, including monies through the Poor Relief Program, including billions of dollars through PAAC, including monies for farmers and fishermen through the Ministry of Agriculture. Now, when you conduct a study, as Capri said that they did, and you're going to ask people about CARE, if you got money from PAAC, you're going to say, I don't know anything about CARE because you got it through the PAAC program, or you got it through the Poor Relief, or you got it as a farmer or a rural fisherman. It was not called CARE. But if you look at the brochure we produced at the time, it had all of the elements and everything was branded care, even things that went through ministries, departments, and agencies. So I understand the point that we have to make sure we reach the vulnerable, but I wouldn't, I'd be careful to take that report did not do justice because it asked about a care program when in fact we use other modalities to reach a very diverse population. So I just wanted to say that because that was raised now. But thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. Members, we are going to return to the agenda now. So with your permission, we will go back to statements by ministers and enable the Minister of Energy, Science and Technology to complete his presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, very brief statement, Madam Speaker, on the JPS 2021 rate adjustment. Madam Speaker, there is a lot of discussion in the public domain, and rightly so, about the recent 1.4% increase to the JPS approved by the OUR. I'm concerned about the timing of the increase, even though some would argue that it represents a marginal movement. That concern led me to review the Electricity Act 2015 to satisfy myself of any legal or other authority that may be vested in the minister to influence or defer the adjustment made to the electricity rate. Madam Speaker, I wish to inform the Parliament and the Jamaican people that the OUR's decision may be subject to review only by the OUR and by way of a judicial review in the courts. Having said that, let me be clear about my own thinking on the matter, and I know that the opposition spokesperson also made an utterance in the public domain on it. It is an established fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has dealt a crushing blow to the economy of Jamaica, and Madam Speaker, to many of our own Jamaican people who are already experiencing financial hardship. I believe that every member of Parliament in this honourable House would share that concern. Madam Speaker, I'll also remind the Parliament that there is a joint select committee that is currently reviewing the Electricity Act 2015 under a scheduled review 5-year process, and it affords us an opportunity as parliamentarians to address issues such as this one from a regulatory and legislative perspective, and I encourage us to avail ourselves of this opportunity. I do not believe that, having regard to the limits placed on me as Minister, that I should proceed to say any more at this time. But I thought it important, Madam Speaker, based on the discussions in the public domain, that I make it clear what this position is as it relates to the authority and power of the Minister for any form of deferment. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I'm just going to make a comment on the energy, and then I'll just come back to the ICT. Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Public Service has embarked on a policy of disconnecting power to entire communities as a way of dealing with electricity theft. I can speak specifically about 3 communities in my own constituency, and I know of communities across the island where on a daily basis, let's say from 10 o'clock in the morning, the power is disconnected and is not turned back on until 7 in the night. This affects all consumers, people who are legitimate paying customers of JPS, and even those who may be consumers without paying. But, Madam Speaker, it is manifestly unfair and unjust to penalize paying customers by turning off this light every single day. This, I say it's a policy because it has been going on for months, and it has been across the board in many communities. The government is a 20% owner of JPS, and the government should not stand for this type of behavior. The OUR is the regulator. I noticed in the media the OUR said they sent a letter and they are waiting on a response. It can't be that passive. The OUR has to take a stronger stance. I have constituents whose children can't access online school because the light turns off every day. I have people who have to work from home and they can't work from home because the light turns off every day. Now, electricity theft is an issue which we have to deal with. And it's not only JPS's problem. It is a collective issue. But the way to solve it cannot be to turn off the light every day in communities to people who are paying customers. I'm calling on the minister to lead the effort in looking at how we can deal with theft. Theft arises for a number of reasons. It's not just that people bad mind and don't want to pay. But if you don't own your property, no, I know the minister understands the word. If you don't pay, if you don't own your property, you can't get a meter. If your landlord don't give you a letter, you can't get a meter. So in many of the urban areas, inner city communities where they're squatting, the people can't legitimately get a GPS meter.
And the cost of rewiring.
And then if your house is not wired and passed by the government electrical inspector, you can't get a meter. And it is expensive to rewire it. So the reality is you have a whole cross-section of Jamaicans who do not have access to a GPS meter under the current circumstances. Yeah. And so they are classified as thief in light. And we have to find a way. We started a project when I was the Minister of State in 2015. We put in place prepaid meters. People bought the credit like how them buy credit for put on them phone, and it helped and it worked. But we cannot allow as a parliament a provider on a daily basis for months to be turning off the light to fee-paying people who are meeting their obligations. It is wrong, and we must take a stance in this parliament on this particular issue. Minister, I want to come to some questions on your statement on the broadband. The first thing I wanted to ask, oh, you want to just deal with that, Phillip? Or you want to do energy first? No, all right, let me deal with the broadband. Just a couple of questions. The first, even though you indicated that a number of the initiatives would be completed within the financial year, for example, the procurement of the tablets for, on page 22, the tablets through the CDF, I would like to ask if you have a specific time frame as to when those 100 tablets per constituency would be provided so that we can give some information to those persons who have applied, who have been calling us, and for whom we can't give them any answers. The second question I want to ask, and the Minister of Education is coming back in, for on the Own Your Own Device program, where there were donations of tablets from the private sector, from persons in the diaspora, I just want to know what is the process for the distribution of those devices. How does the Ministry of Education determine how the devices are distributed? And if you could give us an idea of how many devices have been procured by the government through those means. Because and I'm talking about where people in the diaspora have given donations, where the private sector have given donations, and particularly where they don't name a particular school that the device should go to, because people just give generally into the pool. So once it gets into the pool, what is the process to determine where it goes, how it goes, and how it is distributed? And then to come back to the broadband, I wanted to have an idea in terms of the kind of model you were thinking of to roll out the broadband. NWA owns a lot of the fiber, so that's government. Is it that the government is the thinking that the government would become a service provider because we own the fiber, and then the private sector would deal with the last mile, so to speak, to get to the institutions? Or is the vision that it is going to be primarily private sector driven and led in terms of the private sector making the investments and recouping it as a service provider?
So I will deal with the first and the third, and allow Minister Williams to deal with the Ministry of Education. In relation to the first one, I'll get a complete breakdown. Actually, the USF is actually outside handing out computers, as you know. So I'll get that specific information before the close of the thing. In relation to the third question, in relation to the broadband rollout, the IFCs, as we speak, looking at the various models. They are to come back to us by November. All of what you have said are on the table in relation to the final methodology of how we're going to roll it out. All of them have been looked at because we have looked at several other models in different countries. So it's a bit premature on that, but I will keep you posted as the discussions unfold. But the IFC has gotten all the information they require from us now, so they are actually to come back to us now. We have one more meeting. Minister Williams, you want to deal with the Ministry of Education? Thank you.
So for the one laptop or tablet per child initiative, which is a broad appeal to individuals in Jamaica, to corporate entities, to the diaspora, to date we would have received a little over 18,000 devices. In terms of how are they distributed, if the donor asks for the specific school, we will do that. Otherwise, the rule is, under which we operate, is that we look for those schools that have a low ratio of devices to students, and we would make the donations to those schools. We have on our database the name, the names, the grade, the school of every single student who would have received a device under that program. We keep a very good track of it so that the program can be audited, so that it gives assurance to all those who donate that the devices are going to beneficiaries who qualify, and that information is there and available for all to see in terms of exactly where these devices would have gone.
As a follow, so given the delays in the tablets which are to come for the constituencies, the 100, wouldn't it be advisable then, through the ones that you have in the general pool that you would have gotten donations from, to at least start to share some of those tablets to the members of parliament through the persons who would have qualified based on the application process? Because it's obviously time sensitive. I mean, the longer we wait, we have kids who are missing school, not accessing any education at all. So I don't know what is in the pool right now, but my recommendation would be to use what is in the pool, even if you can't get to 100 per constituency, to give maybe 40 or 50 per applications, so that at least those get into the hands of the qualified students until you can get the 100 per constituency.
I believe everything that we have has been distributed, but I can check to see if we've gotten any recent donations and just exactly what is available.
Just a follow-up, Madam Speaker. There are many initiatives being pursued now, including what my colleague spoke about, including the distribution to the 40,000 students under the PAAC program, and I see also where teachers are getting 5,000 laptops. We as members of parliament are inundated across the constituencies with requests, and it is important for us to know who get what, so that we don't have duplications. I fear that is going to be happening, especially because there has been time delays. So probably, Minister, you could give us a commitment about that, and that information would flow to the members of parliament.
Thank you, member. Very, very good observation. We have that information, and we are going to make it available to all MPs. We'll begin by generating a report for you for the Own Your Own device to show you exactly how many persons would have gotten vouchers, how many persons would have redeemed their vouchers, and in all of your constituencies, there are persons who have not yet redeemed their vouchers, so you could get in touch with those persons. Across, in terms of the other programs, the PAAC programs, we have that information, and we can share that with you as well. In fact, there is an application that's available right now. If you know the student registration number of the student you can just plug it in and it will tell you if that student is the beneficiary of any government program for devices. So that is available. That is something we had sent out to MPs, but we can resend that information again so you can check. As long as you have, even if you have just the name, you can type in the student name and it will tell you if the student has been a beneficiary of any of the government programs. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to follow up on some of the questions that were being raised by my colleagues. So, for example, on page 21 of the presentation by Minister Vaz, that again speaks to the devices, the commitments that he has made, and in particular, the provision of technological solutions. I wanted to just find out from the Minister, one, the 40,000 tablets that were procured and distributed to students through PAAC and so on. There has been many complaints from students that some of the devices that were bought were either not compatible, some of them have been damaged. And so it is important also to find out from the Minister if there has been an audit of those that were distributed, the condition, if they are broken, if they cannot be used now, whose responsibility is it to have it repaired, and what does that look like now? Some of the PAAC students have actually not received, and more importantly is that they can't get information. They don't know where they fall, are they going to get, and what is going to happen. So that also is a lack of information that exists there. I did note that there is the procurement at an advanced stage for tablets between grades 1 and 3 for students on PAAC. But the truth is that many students in school don't know, and their teachers are not in a position to provide them with the information. So those two matters. In terms of the tablets and devices that were also provided for teachers, there have been some questions about the suitability again of the devices that were provided, and I would love to have an understanding if the Minister has done an audit of those, how many are left to get, and what is the feedback from teachers around that. You did answer the ones about the own your own device and how we follow up on that, so that is important. The Minister also spoke about just give me 1 second here. In terms of whether it is the bandwidth, improve the bandwidth, whether it is the internet service that the Minister is talking about, having one contract so all the schools could be connected and so on. The focus was here on public schools. And I agree with the Minister that improving our technological backbone is important for our recovery in COVID, especially in education. The private schools have taken a very big hit as well. And I wanted to know if there was any discussion with private schools in terms of any kind of partnership in terms of that. I also wanted to ask the Minister. The Minister said that we are meeting the challenge of equity and the challenge of access and the challenge of quality. And I wanted to say, Minister, that might be your intention. I don't think we are there. And I don't think we can boast until we have done the kind of audit that ensures that we can make those boasts. And I say that because, remember now, in terms of rebounding and recovering from COVID, it's about the devices, it's about the technology services, it is about support at home, it is about a lot more. And so I want to make sure the promises are there, I'd like to be able to track them and to know where they're covering, where the gaps are, so that we can agree with you, Minister, that you are indeed meeting these challenges.
Okay, member, you've posed a number of questions. Let me start with the one with regards to devices for PAAC students. Not every single PAAC student would have received a device as yet. And we were very careful when we started the program, the 40,000 tablets, to say that those were for students in grades 4, 5, and 6. And every PAAC student in grades 4, 5, and 6 would have received a device, a tablet. We then went on to say that we would move to those in grades 10 to 13 in terms of laptops, PAAC students. And I believe 25,000 laptops were distributed. Again, not every child in grades 10 to 13 would have received just yet, right? But we would have already handed over some 25,000 laptops to students on PAAC. We're currently doing the procurement of 15,000, I'm sorry, I said 25, it was 15,000 in grades 10 to 13. We're currently doing the procurement for tablets for PAAC students in grades 7 to 9. So grades 7 to 9, we have not done any, we haven't completed that procurement yet for PAAC students in grades 7 to 9. That is happening right now. We're also doing procurement for grades 1 to 3 as well for tablets. So it's an ongoing, it's ongoing. It's related to the budget, but we, as budget space becomes available, we will continue to do the program. In terms of the audit, we are 1 year into this program that was started in September of last year. And recall that this program is different than the tablets in school that your government of the day started. And let me just contrast that. The tablets in school program was one in which the schools had the devices. And the students would use the devices in school. When I went to the Ministry of Science, Energy, and Technology, there was a warehouse over there full of broken devices from that program that was launched by your government at the time. This program is quite different. 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 This program is one in which the government has seen it fit to begin a program to ensure that all our students have a device personally. The device is theirs to travel with through their school year. We have been educating them to keep and care the devices. So to the extent that they do not give adequate care to these devices, we have indicated to parents that it is their responsibility to replace those devices for their students. The government is making the initial donation, the initial donation of devices to students, and if you don't care it, that it's your responsibility to replace it. All right. With regards to teachers, you asked about the appropriateness of the tablets for teachers, of the device. Okay, so in 2019, well, in 2019 into 2020, teachers were given a tablet as part of their heads of agreement that they signed in 2017. At the time in 2017, we were not in a pandemic. Our children were not in online school. As part of the agreement between the JTA and the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, there was an agreement to give teachers tablets. It just so happened that the procurement came to fruition during the time of the pandemic, and so the distribution happened during the time of the pandemic. But I've always said, ever since I've been at the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, that a laptop is more appropriate for teachers. That's the tool that they should be using. And so I'm extremely happy today that Minister Vaz announced the beginning of our Laptop for Teachers program with an initial 5,000 laptops for teachers. And yes. And so as soon as that is completed, we will be handing those over to our teachers, and we will continue, as our budget allows, for us to give this tool, this device that's more appropriate for our teachers. With regards to the private schools, as to whether or not there's any partnership regarding bandwidth, at this moment there isn't, but that doesn't mean that there cannot be. I wouldn't be able to say what form that would take, but we're working. Our focus now primarily is on the public schools and on primarily on the public schools all across the range of grades, all across the range of schools, primary and high schools, in order to ensure that the schools themselves have adequate bandwidth connectivity so that they can serve the students, whether they're in the online world or when they come back into the face-to-face environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Minister Vaz, I thank you for your update to the Parliament. In your 220 schools without connectivity, I have 3 of them, so I don't know how I'm so bad lucky. So I have a question and a suggestion. With the USF Wi-Fi hotspots, could there be some priority given to the areas close to those schools to ensure that the hotspots are placed in there? Because the schools, the area where the schools are in, there's no connectivity. But like here, there is service. So could you prioritize then hotspots for these areas so at least the students can have some access? So that's my question to you.
Member, that sounds more than a reasonable suggestion. If I would ask you to just drop me a note on it so that I can action it with the USF.
Okay, thank you, Minister.
Madam Speaker, may I be allowed now to respond to the Minister of Energy on the statement he made just now? Yes. Madam Speaker, the Minister will know that I'm deeply disappointed by the statement, especially after the Prime Minister had responded to my plea 2 weeks ago. And remember, Madam Speaker, my plea wasn't that there was no justification in the OUR's ruling. I did not enter the matter dealing with the legal and regulatory effect of the OUR's ruling. The reason why I didn't do that is because we have now created an environment where investors can feel that the rules are certain and that they are not changed midway. So my issue wasn't with the ruling by the OUR. My issue was based on a humanitarian and what I regard as conscience application of this ruling. So I was expecting the government to use its moral suasion, to use its influence, and the minister, being the member from from West Portland, would understand the difficulty that the people are faced with at this time. And all I was suggesting is for the minister to say to JPS, you don't have to implement this increase at this time. People are suffering now. The hardship is great now. And a delay will not kill the company, but it can certainly kill some Jamaicans out there who are suffering during this time. That is all I was saying. And, Madam Speaker, I have to say a little bit more, because yesterday, for the first time in 3 years, the price of the WTI price per barrel of fuel went up to the highest at $75 US. We are also aware, because over 60% of our electricity now is generated through LNG, that the price of LNG is approaching an all-time high. So we do expect in the next number of days or weeks that the price of electricity will be further impacted. People are having it rough. Between 2016 and now, the price of electricity has moved from 22 cents to just about 30 cents. It is going to go even higher. And so all I was suggesting that the government could use moral suasion to say to the company, just hold straight. Let us wait until the burden of this pandemic is relieved before we implement this increase. And I still believe that it is not too late to achieve that, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Well done.
Madam Speaker, I want to raise an issue with the minister for when he deals with the issue with the OUR. Madam Speaker, Jamaica, there are only 4 other countries in the world that pay higher electricity rates than Jamaica: Denmark, Germany, Belgium, and Bermuda. Now, I know in 2009, Bruce Golding tabled the National Energy Policy. At that time, it was to diversify the energy base, and successive administrations did tremendous work on it. As a matter of fact, at the end of 2015, based on the diversification of energy to introduce wind, solar, and LNG, there was 460 megawatts that was basically generated from those sources. So we know that JPS makes money 2 ways, from the generation and the distribution. Currently, in this region, Jamaica still pays the highest, and my colleague spoke to it, about 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Now the question is, and JPS says a number of things. When you get your light bill, you have a number of things on it, including government tax and a host of issues. But there are really 3 areas: the government tax, JPS's profit margin, and the theft that JPS says that is in the marketplace of about 200,000 households who steal electricity. That accounts for 17.5% of other people's electricity bills. So in other words, and my colleague from Southeast St. Andrew spoke to it. So in other words, they're also charging people to supplement for those people who steal. The problem, though, Minister, is that other jurisdictions in the Caribbean, like Trinidad, pays 7 cents US per kilowatt hour to generate and distribute. I am aware.
Members, we are dealing with the whole issue of electricity, which is important to all of us. Please, let us hear what is being said.
I am aware, Madam Speaker, and the noise doesn't distract me. I'm aware that in this country there are private providers who still supply fuel to JPS at 17 cents to generate that. So in other words, if it is 17 cents to generate it, why is JPS still charging 29 cents per kilowatt hour? What is the 12% in terms of distribution? So why is it that Jamaicans are still paying such a high cost for electricity for JPS's own inefficiency in terms of distribution? That's the question I have. And it has nothing to do, what I'm saying, colleagues, this has nothing to do, because the fact of the matter is electricity costs were brought down as a result of the generation of electricity, as a result of the diversification which both sides dealt with. Yes, Madam Minister, right? So the issue now in terms of a tariff, OUR has to come, OUR needs to come to the Jamaican people, and the government essentially needs to find out why we are still paying so much on the distribution side, Minister, for education. That's the issue. Why are we still paying so much for the inefficiency? And that's the issue, Minister, that I want you to go to the OUR, since you have this issue, right? Because if you're looking at the rates, you have to disaggregate both on the generation side and the distribution side. So my question is, why are we still paying so much in terms of electricity? And why is it that JPS is still being so inefficient, therefore, on the distribution side? Because we know that the costs have gone down as a result of the generation.
Following on that theme, Minister, and going back to a point made by the member for Southeast St. Andrew, where communities in his constituency have been put under heavy manners from JPS, so to speak, and where persons are unable to access electricity for protracted periods during each day. And I've had a similar problem in at least one community in my constituency. Minister Vaz, the issue of regularization of persons who do not have a proper contracted supply is a huge issue across the country. And it is one of the major contributors to the very high electricity costs that paying customers have to bear. But there is no real program or no adequate program for assisting the hundreds and thousands of persons who are presently not contracted customers of JPS to regularize their supply. So it is true that NESAL had transferred that to JSIF, and JSIF is handling it now, but the resources available to JSIF are so minuscule for this that when you're talking about a community where you may have 1,000 families that need to be regularized, and each one is expected to find $75,000 to $100,000 just to rewire, get it inspected, then get it certified, and then enter into a contract with JPS, typically now for prepaid billing. They can't manage it. And so the problem continues, and the hard line that JPS is taking with these residents across the island continues. And it is affecting the social fabric of the society, because children can't access online education because there's no electricity. A little lady who has a little fridge selling ice cream her fridge lock off, she can't sell nothing, beverages can't be cooled. So it is affecting the people at that sector of the society, poorer people, very, very adversely. So really what I'm appealing to you, Minister, is if we couldn't find a way of really intensifying the regularization support for persons who need to come into lawful contractual arrangement with JPS and don't have the means to do so. I think the spin-off benefits would be very significant, and what JSF is able to do now is a real drop in the bucket. So I'm commending to you, Minister, that a much more holistic and serious program around allowing persons to regularize their accounts and become lawful customers so that they can, prove that they have a paying address for whenever they need to go to a bank or whatever. There's so many benefits to be derived from being a lawful customer. And every other paying customer will benefit because there'll be less people who are using electricity without paying for it. So, Minister, this is a major social issue, and it needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Thank you.
Minister,
Thank you very much.
Just one second. Minister, I want to associate myself with the remarks of my colleagues before. Just to say that I want to emphasize the point that the scale and scope of this lock-off from paying customers by JPS is very, very broad and impact not just uptown areas, in particular middle working class areas, but in a number of the communities I represent. And the issue here, Minister, is that it can't be two wrongs make a right. JPS can't penalize those persons who are paying their bills and punish them and have collective punishment being meted out to everyone. It's really collective punishment being meted out to everyone. And I believe that we really ought to be looking at a class action matter, because those persons who are contracted and paying their bills should not be suffering because others are not. Let us focus on those who are not paying their bills and try to find the solution. And as has been said before, the wiring of the houses can help a great deal. It can help. And we've been waiting to see how we move going forward. But finally, Minister, the question I want to ask is, point having been made that the price of, we shift focus on fuel to address the high cost of high fuel cost. But the LNG, we find out, is now rapidly increasing in its pricing. What is it, and we have an arrangement, existing arrangements, the LNG entities here in Jamaica, we are fortunate. Minister, is the ministry satisfied that it has transparency on those dealings between the energy supplier, LNG supplier, and the JPS? Is there transparency in any of those arrangements? And is the OUR, as the entity to monitor and to regulate those arrangements, is the OUR satisfied that it has visibility and transparency in that arrangement? I believe those questions need to be answered because they have far-reaching implications.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And just to remind my colleagues and the public that what we have discussed, catered for it, was sent to the Ministry of Local Government. So in relation to that matter, I would not be able to help you verify in terms of the regularization. So I would suggest that you have a conversation with the Minister. However, what is good is a lot of the points that have been raised have already been raised in the Joint Select Committee. As a matter of fact, almost all of them. And bear in mind that OUR is an independent body. So the minister, where you think the minister can get involved, etc., it's not as simple as that. So the OUR plays a critical role and has to play that critical role, which we are trying to work with them. I think that you will see in the review of the Electricity Act, which is reviewed every 5 years, which is now, as a matter of fact, coincidentally tomorrow morning is the start of going through the matrix of the recommendations that have come in. And I believe that the new Electricity Act of 2021, hopefully, or early 2022, will obviously take into consideration a number of the issues that have been raised here by both several colleagues on the opposition bench. The good thing about it is that the shadow minister and myself work very closely. We have similar problems, so we get along quite well. But in fairness, everybody knows that when it comes to my portfolio responsibility, I put the politics aside and I communicate very well and work with my opposition spokespersons, whoever they may be. So rest assured, opposition leader and colleagues on the other side, that through your shadow spokesperson and myself, we will make the necessary representation to make sure that we come out with a new Electricity Act with addressing some of the critical, fundamental areas that were not dealt with 25 years ago when you started. Thank you.
Also laid on the table of the House today are the following. Ministry paper number 65 of 2021 entitled Annual Report of the National Family Planning Board for the financial year 2019-2020. The Independent Commission of Investigations report reflecting the second quarter, April to June 2021. Provisional Collection of Tax Amendment of Schedule to Stamp Order Act Order 2021, Confirmation and Continuance in Force Resolution. The Provisional Collection of Tax Amendment of Schedule to the Stamp Duty Act Order 2021 Gazette number 23A dated April 1, 2021. The Legal Aid Amendment Regulations 2021. The Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021. And the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021 Resolution. The National Population and Sustainable Development Policy 2029 Green Paper number 1 of 2021 Draft Program of Action. Report of the Internal and External Affairs Committee on a review of the zones of special operations in existing communities and the aquaculture, inland and marine products and byproducts, inspection, licensing and Export Act 2013. And the report of the Joint Select Committee on its deliberations on the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017, and certified appropriation accounts for head 56,000C, Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology for the year 2019-2020.
Before we move on to bills brought from the Senate, I just want to advise, since the supplementary estimates were laid, that there is consensus on both sides for the PAAC to meet at 9 o'clock this Thursday, September 30th. So there is consensus from both sides that PAAC will meet to consider the supplementary estimates. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees.
Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House a copy of the report of the Joint Select Committee on its deliberations on the Law Reform, Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017.
Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House a copy of the report of the Internal and External Affairs Committee, a review of the zones of special operations in existing communities and the aquaculture, inland and marine products and byproducts inspection, licensing and export act 2013.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the Legal Aid Act Amendment Regulations 2021, under the Legal Aid Act, which was laid on the table of the House on the 28th day of September 2021, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, be it resolved that the report of the Internal and External Affairs Committee and a review of the zones of special operations in existing communities and the aquaculture, inland and marine revenue products, marine products and byproducts inspection, licensing and export act 2013, which was laid on the table of the House on the 28th day of September 2021, be approved.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, be it resolved that the report of the Joint Select Committee on its deliberations on the Law Reform, Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017, which was laid on the table of the House on the 28th day of September 2021, be approved.
Minister Clark.
Madam Speaker, I beg you to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the Provision Collection of Tax Act, the Provisional Collection of Tax Amendment of Schedule to the Stamp Duty Act Order 2021, Confirmation and Continuance in Force Resolution. Whereas Section 3, Subsection 1 of the Provisional Collection of Tax Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, empowers the Minister responsible for Finance to make an order, hereinafter referred to as a Provisional Collection of Tax Order, providing for the variation of any tax for the time being in force, for the renewal for a further period of any tax in force during the previous financial year, or which was imposed for any limited period, or for the imposition of any tax. And whereas Section 3, Subsection 1 of the Act provides further that, notwithstanding anything to the contrary, the provisions of a provisional collection of tax order shall, for the period limited by that section and subject to the provisions of the Act, have effect as if contained in an Act of Parliament. And whereas Section 3, Subsection 3 of the Act provides that a provisional collection of tax order shall, subject to Section 3, Subsection 4, continue for a period of 6 months, next following publication thereof in the Gazette, unless the House of Representatives by resolution authorizes the continuance in force of the order for an additional period of 3 months. And whereas Section 3, Subsection 4 of the Act provides that every order made under Section 3, Subsection 1 shall cease to have effect unless it is confirmed with or without modification by resolution of the House of Representatives within the next 30 days on which the House sits after the date of publication of the order in the Gazette. And whereas the Provisional Collection of Tax Amendment of Schedule to Stamp Duty Order 2021 was made by the Minister and published in the Gazette on the 1st day of April 2021, and whereas it is desirable that the Provisional Collection of Tax Amendment of Schedule to the Stamp Duty Act Order 2021 should be confirmed and authorized to continue in force for an additional period of 3 months. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Honourable House of Representatives as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as a provisional collection of tax amendment of schedule to the Stamp Duty Act Order 2021 confirmation and continuance in force resolution. 2. The provisional collection of tax amendment of schedule to the Stamp Duty Act Order 2021 is confirmed and authorized to continue in force for an additional period of 3 months. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I'll move for suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Minister Shaw.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Act 2017, Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021 Resolution. Whereas, by virtue of Section 54, subsection 1 of the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Act 2017, hereafter referred to as the Act, the Minister may make regulations to give effect to the purposes of the Act. And whereas Section 54, Section 2 of the Act provides that regulations made under the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas on the 24th day of September 2021, the Minister made agricultural loan societies and approved organizations regulations 2021. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021 Resolution. The Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021 are hereby affirmed. Madam Speaker, I beg also to give notice that at the next sitting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled an Act to Amend the Companies Act 2021. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Questions and answers to questions?
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the...
Madam Speaker, the time being 4:34, I now move that the House be allowed to receive and answer questions at this time.
The question before the House is that the time being 4:35 now, the agenda, we allow questions and answers to questions to be taken at this time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the expiration of 21 days, I will ask the Minister of Education the question standing in my name.
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Change of Name and Amendment Act 2021.
A bill shortly entitled the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Change of Name and Amendment Act 2021, read a first time.
Public business.
Members, a private bill shortly entitled the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, Validation, Indemnification and Amendment Act 2020-21 has been presented to this Honourable House. The standing orders of the House of Representatives stipulates at order number 85-7 that private bills must be considered by a special select committee. However, before this can take place, the bill must be read a second time. I now therefore move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Incorporation and Vesting Law 1954 to make provision for the replacement of the offices which constitute the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, to make provision for the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, to be conferred with express powers to govern its management and administration, and to validate and indemnify acts carried out by the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, in good faith during the period commencing on the 12th day of April 1954 and ending on the date of commencement of this Act, to be now read a second time.
The question before the House is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Incorporation and Vesting Law 1954 to make provision for the replacement of the offices which constitute the Sisters of Mercies of Jamaica, British West Indies, to make provision for the Sisters of Mercies of Jamaica, British West Indies, to be conferred with express powers to govern its management and administration, and to validate and indemnify acts carried out by the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, in good faith during the period commencing on the 12th day of April 1954 and ending on the date of commencement of this Act, be now read a second time.
Madam Speaker, I now move, be it resolved that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Incorporation and Vesting Law 1954 to make provision for the replacement of the offices which constitute the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, to make provision for the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, and to be conferred with express powers to govern its management and administration, and to validate and indemnify acts carried out by the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, in good faith during the period commencing on the 12th day of April 1954 and ending on the date of commencement of this Act, be referred to the Private Bills Committee for consideration and report. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Change of Name and Amendment Act 2021 be read a second time.
The question is?
I want to give notice of second reading of that bill.
In favour? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favour? Those against? Yes.
Madam Speaker, the matter before the House is the Legal Aid Amendment Regulations Act, Regulations 2021. In exercise of the power conferred upon the Minister by Section 28(1)(g) and H of the Legal Aid Act, the following regulations are hereby made. 1. These regulations may be cited as the Legal Aid Amendment Regulations 2021 and shall be read and construed as one with the Legal Aid Regulations 2000, hereinafter referred to as the principal regulations, and all amendments thereto. Regulations 21 of the principal regulations is amended by renumbering the regulation as Regulations 21(1) and inserting the following as paragraph 2 and 3. 2, where the Council is satisfied that a matter under legal aid certificate falls within paragraph 3, there shall be paid to the attorney at law who is assigned the matter under the legal aid certificate the fee specified in Part 2A of the second schedule up to the maximum fees specified in that part. 3, a matter falls within this paragraph if the matter is a trial which, at the date of commencement of the trial, involves at least 6 defendants who are charged with multiple counts on the same indictment. And B, the Minister issues a certificate in writing specifying that the matter is a complex criminal matter to which this paragraph applies due to the factors specified in subparagraph A. The second schedule of the principal regulation is amended, Madam Speaker, by deleting Part 2 and substituting, therefore, the following. Members of the House, it should be noted that legal aid is a constitutional provision by the government of Jamaica. It is not intended that these fees represent the actual worth of the attorneys who represent clients. But we acknowledge that some compensation must be provided to the attorneys who have to leave their private practice and assist indigent accused persons in their criminal trial. So in matters, Madam Speaker, such as murder, the original fees for senior counsel was $135,000. We have doubled it to $270,000, a flat sum. The junior attorneys was $90,000. We have doubled it to $180,000. And it's the same, Madam Speaker, for non-capital murder, manslaughter, lesser fees for firearm offences, senior counsel $180,000, junior counsel $130,000. In the parish courts for fraud offences, it's $90,000, and for junior counsel $60,000. For fraud cases, senior counsel $120,000, junior counsel $90,000. And, Madam Speaker, the list has been provided to all members of Parliament, a revised contribution from the state on various matters that legal aid has been provided. More importantly, colleagues in the House, at page 3, only last year, complex matters, gang cases, where we have agreed that if you have 6 or more persons with multiple offences before the courts, these matters may take more than the normal 3 to a week for trial. It may indeed conclude or continue for months. And what we have done, Madam Speaker, is to provide that for the first month of trial, for senior counsel is $300,000, for junior counsel $200,000, and for subsequent month is $150,000 for senior counsel and junior counsel $100,000, up, Madam Speaker, to a maximum of $1.2 million for senior counsel and $800,000 for junior counsel. Now, the truth, colleagues, and to the public at large, these are insufficient. We acknowledge that. But these are contributions from the state to attorneys. In truth, Madam Speaker, one trial, the Uchens gang, where a number of attorneys were paid, we used up $55 million in legal fees. If we continue at that rate, where even the present trial going on, Madam Speaker, the estimate is that it will be $50 million. So you can understand, members of Parliament, colleagues, that we have to control the amount that we make a contribution towards, because if we really provide what the attorneys are asking for, one trial could use up the legal aid bill provided by this House. And we have, Madam Speaker, to ensure that other cases, serious cases of murder and other cases tried before the court, for which we're only providing $270,000, that for senior counsel, that they can also benefit from the contribution from the state. So with that said, Madam Speaker, I would ask the House to bear that in mind and to approve the changes in these provisions. I can say, Madam Speaker, I know the hardship, I know the challenges, because when, as a junior counsel, I appeared at the bar, I used to get $35,000 to do an appeal. And I must tell you, Madam Speaker, in all sincerity, I didn't really claim, but I benefited from the experience. I benefited from making my contribution in defending indigent attorneys. And I think that is what we are asking attorneys to do when they make their contribution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes. Members, the question is that the motion, notice of which the Minister gave.
Madam Speaker, just two questions I want to ask you. Just, Minister, the figures that you have quoted for of $50-odd million for a single trial are really shocking, but I don't know the details. But the questions I have...
Opposition, the matter, I think, has been referred to committee.
Oh.
Yes, so we can have...
This is not an affirmative approval?
No, it is not.
It's just to refer it?
Yes,
okay,
just for referral.
But if I could just point out two quick things.
Sure.
One is, Minister, in the proposed regulations, or I notice there's still references to preliminary inquiries. And we've abandoned that some time ago and used committal proceedings. So you may want to consider us updating the language there.
The truth is that it happens. You don't really have a preliminary inquiry. It should really be referred to as committal proceedings.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, you're correct.
The other question I have, in the fees for complex criminal matters, we say for the first 30 days of trial, and there's a figure. Are you talking there about days on which there is a trial, or is that meant to be 30 days from the start of the trial? It's a bit ambiguous, and I think it's important to make that clear. Yeah.
It's really the month rather than the actual days.
Yeah, well, I think the regulation should be drafted to make it clear, because it's dealing with money, and you don't want to dispute
that is correct.
By the claimant as to what they're entitled to.
That is correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
The question, therefore, before the House is that the motion be now approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, it is my pleasure at this time to introduce the constituency, the State of Constituency debate. And today we will have two presenters. They are the Honorable Alando Terrelonge, MP for St. Catherine East Central, and MP for Hanover West, Ms. Tamika Davis. I will now ask the Member of Parliament for St. Catherine East Central to make his presentation. But, Madam Speaker, I ask that the debate
just before
proceed.
we start the sectoral debates, there is an item on the public business, the provisional collection of tax amendment schedule to the stamp duty. Are we doing that? Minister of Finance? There is an item, the provisional collection of tax amendment of schedule, which has not been done.
No, we could just do it now. It would take 2 minutes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker,
Before you do, may I ask the House for the approval of the suspension of the agenda for us to do the item provisional collection of tax amendment schedule by the Minister, and then we can return to the sectoral debate. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Minister Clark.
To introduce a provisional collection of tax amendment schedule to the stamp duty order, confirmation and continuance in force resolution. Madam Speaker, in March 2021, Cabinet approved the April 1st, 2021 revenue measure, which is announced in my budget presentation, which effectively remove the customs processing fee imposed on exports of goods of value less than $500 in value. In essence, this measure provided that exports below that threshold would be exempted from the customs processing fee. And to give effect to this measure, regulations were signed. Madam Speaker, in addition to the $500, there is an additional duty imposed in the stamp duty schedule of $5 on customs outward per set, and it's deemed impractical for the taxpayer to continue to pay stamp duty now on a nil rate of CAF if the exports are below the threshold. Madam Speaker, a provisional tax order was a provisional collection of tax order was signed to facilitate the expedient removal of this obligation, and you have a certain amount of time, 6 months. That 6 months is now up, and we wish to renew it for another 3 months pending finalization of the definitive legislation. And I don't believe, and I would want to put that to the House for approval, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, the opposition doesn't have an objection. We just urge the government to move quickly to finalize the legislation so that it can be in place.
With that, Madam Speaker, I ask that the resolution be approved.
The question, therefore, before the House is that the motion, notice of which was given earlier by the Minister, be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes. Those against? The ayes have it. Motion approved. That we return to the agenda, to public business and the start of the sectoral debate. Continuation of the sectoral debate. State of the nation. Continuation of the state of the nation. Minister Alando, Terrelonge.
Madam Speaker, I wish to ask permission to speak from a seat other than my seat before I commence with my presentation, if you so approve.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representation in the time of COVID. Madam Speaker, I rise today as the proud Member of Parliament representing the people of St. Catherine, East Central. In making my contribution to the State of the Constituency debate, I must first express my heartfelt gratitude to Almighty God, who has endowed me with visions of growth, development, and prosperity, which I now use in humble service to my constituents and my nation. I am grateful for the confidence the Most Honourable Prime Minister has invested in me, affording the opportunity to represent the people of St. Catherine East Central. and to work diligently with the Honourable Olivia Babs-de-Grange as her Minister of State in service to the people of Jamaica in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. I am forever indebted to my family, in particular Raquel and her 3 boys, my mother and father, for their support and understanding as I answer this most noble of calls, service to country. I must also thank the members of Team Terrelonge who have been my standard bearers, helping me to return as a second-term Member of Parliament, achieving in East Central St. Catherine what no other Member of Parliament representing the Jamaica Labour Party has done in the last 40 years. Madam Speaker, special reference must be made to the chairmen of the 3 divisions of which I represent. Joy Bella Brown of the Gregory Park Division, Marlon Gordon representing the Portmore Pines Division, and Lennox Hines representing the South Bar Division, without whose support and that of our other team leaders, we would not have achieved victory in 2016 and again in 2020. And finally, Madam Speaker, I must thank the people of St. Catherine East Central, who by their votes first in 2016 proved to the nation that after 36 years of failed representation and progress to nowhere, enough was enough. Without them, I would not be standing here today, so let me big up my East Central St. Catherine family. In East Central St. Catherine, our slogan remains strong with Terrelonge. We are more than a community, we are a family. In a community, Madam Speaker, we have the luxury of picking and choosing our priorities based on self-interest. We can be committed only so far and no further. But in a family, your pain is my pain, your joy, my joy. In a family, we do not have the luxury of opting out. We have to commit to our mutual survival and success. This is how we have been building a stronger and better St. Catherine East Central, even in the time of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, the 10 pillars on which we have been rebuilding or continue to build East Central St. Catherine is headed by our COVID response pillar. In April 2020, I stood in this very house and noted for all Jamaicans that we are at war against an enemy that we cannot see, but an enemy that nonetheless poses a real threat to the very survival of each and every single one of us. In the last 18 months, we remain in the trenches. From curfews, no movement days, social distances, disruption to the education and economic fabric of our society, we remain at war with the COVID pandemic. As captain, or perhaps I would say as general, in the East Central St. Catherine Army against the war COVID-19, we have been on the front line. And I want all Jamaicans to understand that in the war against COVID-19, we are all on the front line. Madam Speaker, recognizing that we are all on the front line, we must arm ourselves. And our message to the people of St. Catherine East Central and Jamaica is that the vaccine is our best defense against the virus. And as such, it behoves every single one of us to join forces in this war. In East Central St. Catherine, we have been mobilizing our constituents to get the vaccine. From blitzes at the Heart Academy, Cayman and Strack, thousands of our residents have been vaccinated. I must make special mention to our vaccination queen, Joy Bella Brown, the Council of Gregory Park, along with my transportation manager, Andrew Campbell, who have been instrumental in providing exemplary leadership to get our residents to the vaccination centres. We understand that the message to fight myths and misinformation with facts, it is incumbent on us as leaders in St. Catherine Central to take the message to the people. And so we continue to work as we would during an election cycle, and we bring the message of hope, of peace, but most importantly, of the importance of getting the vaccine so that we can all rid Jamaica of the scourge of this virus. Madam Speaker, one unvaccinated resident poses a risk to every single one of us, and we must never forget that as a family, we must ensure we are all vaccinated. Where education is concerned, I have always maintained that an education is the best gift we can give to our children. It is through an education that we will build a nation of thinkers and innovators. We can only move forward as a nation if we invest in the education of our people. So since taking office as Member of Parliament, I have established the Terrelonge Award for Academic Excellence for primary school students. Every year, we award approximately 50 top students across the 3 primary schools, Nagahead Primary, Gregory Park Primary, and Independent City Primary, with this prestigious award and their academic grant. Madam Speaker, in general, since 2016, notwithstanding the pandemic that exists today, we continue with our annual drive to assist more than 3,500 students each year, annually, across the constituency, with vouchers for back-to-school books, bags, helping them with tuition, and providing other back-to-school support. My lady, Madam Speaker, our academic budget each year runs between $6.5 and $7 million, and it is these funds that we continue to make education a reality for all. However, Madam Speaker, representation in the time of COVID-19 has seen much disruption in the education of our students in East Central St. Catherine. The reality of online education has exposed the gaps in access to the requisite technology across the diverse households within the constituency. There is an urgent need to improve technology across the constituency and, in fact, across the nation. It must be done with greater urgency because we do not want to pit the privileged against the poor. The imbalance and harsh realities of rich and poor, educated and uneducated parents, housing realities, one room in a board house, zinc roof, versus 5-bedroom mansions, my lady. Lack of data and lack of Wi-Fi compounded by the cost to ensure that we have the requisite technology. It has shown that there is a great abyss that must be plugged. Madam Speaker, I pause to say thank you to the Minister of Technology. Having heard his presentation today, I am indeed grateful. It is a ray of hope upon the horizon of which we all stand. Because, Madam Speaker, his drive and the drive of his ministry is imperative. Technology has become no different from the very air we breathe and the water we drink, and it must be in the palms of every single Jamaican child. I pause also to say a special thanks to Mr. Dawes, Chairman Morin, and the entire team at the Universal Service Fund for the work that they have been doing under the guidance of Minister Vaz. Recently, I met with Mr. Dawes from the USF, and we toured several areas in Gregory Park and Newlands, and we looked at the spaces for the community Wi-Fi access, and 3 such spaces were located. And so I want to say, from Cottage Drive back to Beverly Flats, you can be rest assured that free public Wi-Fi is on the way, and our children are on the way to a better education. Where infrastructure development is concerned, my lady, we have drafted a blueprint of the kind of physical environment that our constituents deserve, a modern society. That is the basic standard of decency that we cannot fall below. As such, I have launched a program to fix and rehabilitate the roads across all communities in St. Catherine East Central. Where footpaths used to be, paved asphalt roads are now in place. From over 30 minor roads and major boulevards, we have improved the road surfaces across East Central St. Catherine. And I must say a very big thank you to Minister Warmington and the team at the National Works Agency for their continued commitment to improving the infrastructure in East Central. Madam Speaker, there is still much more work to be done in terms of rehabilitating the roads. Communities still languish with bad roads, my lady, and I will continue my pledge to work with the National Work Agency to secure greater funding so that we can fix these other roads. In terms of community development, my lady, over the past 2 years, we have helped and worked with our community schemes and community leaders. We have built new public recreational facilities, public spaces, and parks for our children in communities such as Portmore Pines, Silverstone, West Cumberland, Gregory Park, Christian Meadows, Morris Meadows, and Cedar Grove. Together, we have implemented general public beautification and sanitation projects to keep the constituency clean. We continue with our drain cleaning programs, our debushing work, painting our sidewalks and curb walls with the assistance of the Solid Waste Management Authority to ensure that the beautification of our communities is constant. My lady, one factor remains as well, and that is the improvements, or rather the building, of the new Christian Penn Health Centre. And I must say thank you to Minister Tufton, who came to St. Catherine East Central in the last year and gave his commitment and the commitment of the Ministry of Health and Wellness to ensure that the new health centre in Christian Penn will be built, and we thank him and hold him and his ministry to their commitment. His commitment to the people of East Central St. Catherine is even more important as we continue with our representation in the time of COVID-19. My lady, recently, communities in Gregory Park have seen disruption to the development that we...
Madam Speaker, I ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue his speech to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches.
The question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Terrelonge.
Thank you so much, my lady. I will move fast. What I will say, my lady, is that we have had disruption in the communities in Gregory Park, in Portmore Villa, communities known as Gulf and Mexico. My lady, these communities present a challenge to our peacekeeping efforts. They are laden with zincs, choppy getaways, and they are not navigable to our police-keeping forces. Home ownership in this regard is important, and it behoves us as a government. It behoves the commitment made by the NHT, working with HAJ, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Development, to ensure that these communities are replaced with low-income homes with the proper infrastructure for all our families. I have been in discussions with Mr. Martin Miller and his team at the NHT, and I look forward to continuing those discussions so that we can remove the labyrinth of zinc fence and board houses and zinc roofs and give all residents proper homes and suitable facilities in the near future. My lady, we continue with our job creation and skills development. We continue with our developing business and entrepreneurship. We continue with farming and agriculture, and we continue to support our constituents with disabilities. I might add, my lady, that representation in the time of COVID has seen us all become constituents with disabilities, simply because COVID has made us all vulnerable. Not only is the man with the stick unable, who is blind and unable to see, vulnerable, but so too is every single mother or single father or family who has lost their jobs simply as a result of the ravages of COVID-19. Again, my lady, representation in the time of COVID-19, in order to get back to some semblance of normalcy, must include the constant messaging of getting the vaccine, because the vaccine remains our best defense against the virus. My lady, since March 2020, we have embarked on a campaign to provide food, grocery items for the vulnerable. Since then, we have provided care packages to more than 5,000 residents across St. Catherine East Central. My lady, we walk and we talk and we deliver. We put to action and we keep St. Catherine East Central strong with Terrelonge, notwithstanding the ravages of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, the war is far from over, but as a constituency, we have many victories to celebrate. It is my commitment to the people of St. Catherine East Central, to my East Central St. Catherine family, that I will continue to represent on your behalf, that I will ensure that the project outlined by the Most Honourable Prime Minister in 2018 to use the National Housing Trust funds to see the first 100 schemes developed, that project, notwithstanding the delay, that project will go ahead full speed. So to my residents in Hamilton Gardens, Southborough, Caymanas Garden Site A and D, Lime Tree Grove, be rest assured that the community rehabilitations will come. To my St. Catherine East Central family, let us continue to join hearts and hands. Let us continue to work together to carry out the visions of growth, development, and prosperity for East Central St. Catherine and all Jamaica, strong with Terrelonge. I thank you.
House Leader Tamika. Member of Parliament Tamika Davis from Hanover West.
Speaker, it is with a great sense of pride that I rise to make my contribution to the state of the constituency debate on behalf of the people of Hanover Western. Before I delve into my presentation, I feel that the words of coffee are quite apt in this instance. Gratitude is a must. As such, I want to give all praise and honor to the Almighty God for his unwavering love and favor on my life. All that I am and all that I will ever be is because of his grace and mercy. I also wish to thank my family, especially my mother, Hepsi Hopkins, as well as my daughter, Ogeji, who is my external heart. Also to be acknowledged are the supportive and hardworking staff of the Hanover Western Constituency Office, my counselor and caretakers, as well as members of the executive and management teams and workers. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? A time in which the number of women in the parliament is at an all-time high. It is at this juncture that I wish to commend our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Andrew Holness, for his foresight and political acumen in facilitating the ascension of 14 female parliamentarians to the House. A record for any political party. Thank you. The full and equitable participation of women in public life is critical, Madam Speaker, as it leads to the development of robust and vibrant democracies. And I am grateful to be a part of the present cohort of female parliamentarians representing a new thrust in the political arena. To the men in the Parliament, I thank you for your support and guidance. But above all, I wish to pay tribute to the group of persons who are directly responsible for my standing here before you all today, the people of Hanover Western. Madam Speaker, if you will allow me, let me tell you a little about Hanover Western. It is more than that far place. It is more than that little town you drive through to get to Negril. We are small, but we are proud. We are large in generosity of heart and spirit. We possess the uncanny ability to thrive, even when having little physical resources. We are often forgotten, yet we are able to change the course of Jamaican history by having the distinction of producing the very first Prime Minister of Jamaica, Sir Alexander Bustamante. And in the same vein, by allowing me to be the first female member of Parliament for this constituency. To my constituents, I say to you all that I am clear-eyed in the knowledge that being your member of Parliament is a solemn duty. It is a noble task, and one which I do not take lightly. There can be no higher calling than that of being in the service of your fellow man, to be a voice for the voiceless, to act as a hand and feet for the lame and infirm, and also to be an exemplar and repository of the very best of our homegrown Jamaican values. Madam Speaker, there is a Chinese proverb that says, if you're planning for a year, sow rice. If you're planning for a decade, plant trees. But if you're planning for a lifetime, educate people. Education is one of the most powerful and proven vehicles for sustainable development. Against the backdrop of the current global pandemic, regular and sustained access to electronic devices such as tablets and laptops is now of paramount importance in order to prevent learning loss. It is for this reason that we have focused on education. We have assisted and distributed well over 100 tablets to ensure that the children in Hanover will be able to engage in remote learning and access these resources. This will be supplemented by a further 100 tablets from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and as we were advised today, these are to be expected soon. With regards to the internet access, I was heartened today by the presentation by the Minister. Under his program, the initiative to develop internet signals the government's seriousness in making universal access to reliable internet a reality. This will undoubtedly have a positive impact on not only the educational prospects of the children of Hanover Western, but indeed all of Jamaica. Apart from the major towns like Lucy, it is with great pride that we note that small communities such as Brissett, Dias, Green Island, and Kendall are all slated to receive community access points, which are established facilities that will provide free internet to residents, courtesy of the University of Madam Speaker, it was not a difficult decision to award well over $4 million in tertiary grants to 40 exceptional and deserving university students, which represents the largest such disbursal in the history of the constituency. History was also made when we, for the first time ever, held a ceremony honoring the top-performing PEP students from all 16 primary schools in the constituency, where each awardee received vouchers to assist with book purchases. Moreover, we have just recently partnered with the HOPE program to facilitate the placement of over 80 unattached youth in a training and job placement program. We have already secured employment for some of these individuals with the assistance of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, and there is another group that is awaiting job placement, having just concluded their training. For too long, scant regard has been paid to our road infrastructure, and as a result, bad roads have historically been associated with the constituency. Madam Speaker, I stand here today to proclaim without hesitation or reservation that this will no longer be the case, because change has come to Western Hanover and work has already begun in this regard. There have been numerous road repairs across the length and breadth of the constituency. Kew, Mount Peace, Cocoon, Middlesex are only some of the roads that have benefited. Several road patching programs have been executed with the result that over 4 kilometers of roadway have been cumulatively patched. This is of tremendous benefit to roadways leading to the Island Traffic Authority and, more importantly, to the Lucy Infirmary. The long neglected roadway through Bachelor's Hall, Richmond, Lances River have also received attention. In May of this year, over $2 million was spent from the Constituency Development Fund to carry out critical drain cleaning and debushing works across all the divisions in the constituency, namely Lucy, Riverside, Paulwell, and Green Island. Community roads such as Green River and Archwell benefited significantly as well. Madam Speaker, I'm proud to report that several new infrastructure projects have been recommended and evaluated for full rehabilitation. They are currently at the project procurement phase and, when implemented, will significantly improve the road network across the constituency. These are the roadway from Middlesex to McLaren Gate, with focus on the McLaren Gate to the Mount Carmel section. 2, the roadway from Dias to Davis Cove, focusing on the Cocoon to Blenheim section in the Paulwell division, and the roadway from Bachelor's Hall to St. Simon along the Lances River to Horton Court Main Road in the Lucy division. Also, Madam Speaker, under the government's new paradigm approach to routine road maintenance, the 12.6-kilometer long roadway from Riley to Glasgow was selected, assessed, and included for maintenance consideration under the Lengthman program in May of this year. Due to the critical nature of this arterial road, we anticipate that the procurement process will be completed in short order. My attention, Madam Speaker, is also fixed on other infrastructural issues. The first concern has to do with the Riley Bridge. The Riley Bridge has a triple opening arch which sits on the edge of the town. Whenever there is significant rainfall, bamboo and tree roots from upstream block the arches. This causes the river to overflow its bank, leading to flooding and severe traffic delays and losses. It is high time for the bridge to be removed and replaced with a more modern open span bridge, which would allow us to save on maintenance and eliminate the hindrance of flooding for residents and visitors alike. The traffic situation, the traffic in Lucy. Madam Speaker, it is also of grave concern. Increasing housing units coupled with an expansion of construction and commercial activities has resulted in an increase in traffic volumes. As a consequence, the regular roads in Lucy are no longer able to filter the traffic through the town, and delays during peak and lunch hour are now almost a daily occurrence. It is proposed to upgrade and rehabilitate the Malcolm Heights Drive, and the other suggestion is the dualization of the Willie DeLissa Drive, along with the supporting traffic and pedestrian control measures. The measures outlined just now represent immediate short-term solutions. However, it is painfully obvious that a bypass is needed. The town of Lucy needs a bypass. Yes, Prime Minister. The one-way into the town has outlived its usefulness, and it is time enough for the change. As it relates to water, Madam Speaker, other constituencies occasionally cry, "We want justice." For Hanover Western, the constant cry is, "We want water." The majority of communities in the constituency are plagued with either low water pressure or no water supply, with some areas not having access to this precious commodity for well over a decade. It is clear, Madam Speaker, that this situation needs to be addressed, but we are equal to the task. To alleviate the situation in the short term, we have been trucking water to the affected areas, and we have also distributed water tanks to help provide short-term relief. Recent repairs on the Pell River network have yielded minor improvements, and the communities of Dyas, Cocoon, and Blenheim are currently undergoing further assessments by Rural Water for improvements. Madam Speaker, tourism continues to be a mainstay for Hanover Western, and at a time when the country was shrouded in uncertainty, investors began construction on a brand new 2,000 hotel in Green Island. This investment is not only a vote of confidence in our local economy and our ability to bounce back, but it also represents future employment opportunities for many residents in the constituency. This is why we have partnered with HEART to ensure that our youth will be duly qualified for the varied jobs that will arise once the hotel commences its operations. Hanover Western also possesses great potential for the development of community tourism, what with our natural mountain trails, rivers, and forested areas. Just last week, Thursday, we buried Lee Scratch Perry, at his home in Caldwell. His birthplace, Minister, could be transformed into a cultural site akin to the Bob Marley Museum.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the suspension, that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue her speech to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches.
The question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete her presentation. Those in favour? Again, the ayes have it.
I'm most obliged, Madam Speaker, and to my colleagues as well. The birthplace of Lee Scratch Perry could be transformed into a cultural site akin to the Bob Marley Museum in Kingston, where visitors can learn about his extraordinary global impact on music. We therefore welcome an audience with the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Sports, Culture and Entertainment to reimagine what a 21st century tourism product for Hanover Western looks like. With regards to our vaccination efforts, doses of the COVID-19 vaccines were first administered in the constituency on March 10, 2021. I am proud to report that as of September 24, 18,203 persons in Hanover have received a first dose of the vaccine, while 8% of the constituent population have been fully vaccinated. The recent vaccination blitz held on September 1, with the presence of our Minister of Health and Wellness and the Social Development Committee and other stakeholders, bore much fruit. The health team was able to administer a total of 890 doses, which was the third highest ever daily total. In order to keep the momentum, the Green Island and the Lucy Health Centers will operate as fixed vaccination sites. Community outreach activity is also being planned for Dias and Askinish. These are communities on the outskirts of the towns, and it is hoped that by going into the community, the uptake will be greater. Madam Speaker, I am committed to traversing the highways and byways of Hanover Western to convince each and every one of my constituents about the benefits of being vaccinated so that they can make an informed decision. Development, Madam Speaker, is linked to people participating in the political process. It means having the means to funnel their concerns to those in leadership and knowing, not just feeling, that they are a part of what is happening, which is why the Hanover Western Constituency Office was opened in June, the first ever for the parish. This is a fulfillment of my campaign promise to be an accessible member of Parliament for all the residents. Under the Rural Development Program and through the stewardship of the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, $650 million had been earmarked to help revitalize some communities in various parts of the island. We are extremely proud that the community of Chambers Pen was chosen to be the first community to undergo this transformation. Scoping for this project has begun, which will conclude with the installation of water, electricity, internet access, roads, sidewalks, community parks, and indigent housing. The Chambers Pen Primary School will also benefit greatly as it is captured under this program. An offshoot of this is that there will be the creation of temporary and permanent employment opportunities. I also note, Madam Speaker, that care packages were delivered to well over 3,000 residents. Persons also benefited through a program implemented by the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. I turn now to agriculture, Madam Speaker. This is an important mainstay for the parish. The main crops produced by our constituency are plantains, bananas, and of course, the globally acclaimed Lucy yam. Last year, the COVID-19 pandemic caused adverse effect on the sector, owing to the fact that many farmers had to reduce their production because of lessened demand from hotels and other established markets. We are, however, optimistic, Madam Speaker, about our future prospects and continue to lend the necessary support to ensure that this very important sector thrives. To this end, we have handed over irrigation units and 1,000-gallon water storage tanks to several farmers. Over $1 million in financial incentives was also dispersed to assist with chicken rearing and the purchase of production tools. Madam Speaker, plans are also afoot to establish 2 agro-processing programs at the Blenheim and Pell River community centers. This will help to set the foundation to transition from primary producers to agro-producers, thereby enhancing our value chain production. So you see, Madam Speaker, plans are well on the way to transform the fortunes of this great constituency. In closing, Madam Speaker, I leave you with the words of John the Apostle. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers. It is my fervent wish that prosperity will be the portion of this great nation of ours, that God will bless us with spiritual, physical, and economic health, and that he will grant divine wisdom to the Prime Minister and all other national leaders, so that we may use successfully this opportunity to steer through the most challenging crisis that we've ever faced as a nation. I thank you.
Madam Speaker, we had 2 excellent presentations in the constituency, the state of the constituency debate this afternoon. So at this time, I now ask that the debate be suspended. Madam Speaker, I ask that the debate be suspended this time.
The question before the House is that the debate be suspended. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, there being no further business, I now ask that the Honorable House adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, September 29, at 2 p.m. The state of the constituency debate will continue tomorrow, and the speakers will be Dr. the Honorable Norman Dunn, MP for St. Mary Southeast, Mrs. Anne-Marie Vaz, MP Portland Eastern, and Mr. Robert Chin, MP Manchester Southern. So at this time, Madam Speaker, I ask that the House be adjourned.
The question before the House is that we adjourn until tomorrow at 2 p.m., at which time we will have 3 members of Parliament contribute to the debate. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House is now adjourned.